So, since the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 2 and the Samsung Galaxy S20 Fan Edition, if someone was to ask me which Samsung device I should go for, it's very hard for me, very difficult for me to actually recommend a device besides maybe the Note series. And the main reason is because they have that Exynos processor in there in this region, which previously hasn't really performed up to scratch in comparison what the rest of the world is getting with a Snapdragon processor chip. But with the Samsung Galaxy S21 series, that's changed a little bit because both devices have performed really well, and I've made the effort to actually get the Exynos and the Snapdragon version to compare this and get the experience of what you'd get in comparison. The Samsung Galaxy S21 base model in this video is running on Exynos 2100, whilst the S21 Ultra in this review video is running the latest Snapdragon 888 processor. Is it 888? Let me know in the comments below. For the Samsung Galaxy S21 series this year, we've seen improvements in performance, processor performance, battery life. The design is much better as well, it's improved as well. But without further ado, let's get into this review and see what they're all about and my experience with it. Onto the design, for me, on the front, there's nothing special about these devices. You get the hole punch camera where the Samsung Galaxy S21 base model has a 12 megapixel camera there, and on the S21 Ultra you get a 64 megapixel front-facing shooter. Don't be fooled by the big numbers though, because they still both perform really well when it comes to taking selfies, including portraits or recording videos as well. If you check my vlogging kit from Rode microphones, the video that I did on that, you can see some samples of what I did with the front-facing camera and the audio quality as well, which actually the microphone actually came out really well. But if you want to step up your vlogging game, do check out that video and see what that's all about. Furthermore, on the design, the front screens themselves, both devices, in fact, all the Samsung Galaxy S21 series have the latest Corning Gorilla Glass Victors, which just means it's a lot stronger and it's more resistant when it comes to scratches as well. On the Samsung Galaxy S21, the one that I received for this review, it came with a screen protector already pre-installed on there. But the S21 Ultra that I got doesn't have the screen protector pre-installed. But nonetheless though, they still both perform well in terms of durability. It's IP68 water and dust resistant, so I didn't worry about using it at all without a case on there. But if you're really worried about that kind of stuff, do get a case for it. There are plenty of cases available, including the official ones and some from one of our sponsors, Spec Products, which you can get for the devices. Moving on to the back, the Samsung Galaxy S21 basic model has a glass tip back, and the Ultra has a full-on glass on the back as well, which for the Ultra feels a lot more premium. And if you pay more money for that kind of device, you'd expect that heft on the device in comparison to the Samsung Galaxy S20 from last year. It just felt cheap and just not up to scratch in terms of premium quality for me, in my opinion. The Samsung Galaxy S21 has that glass sit back, but don't be fooled by this. It still feels premium in my opinion. I really like the finishing. And the matte finishing on there, talk about finishing. How many times am I going to say this? The matte finishing on the back is designed to actually reduce the level of fingerprint magnets that you get on the back. But in my opinion, in my experience, you still get a lot of fingerprint mark on there if you're using it day to day, but it's easier to wipe off in comparison to a glossy finish on the back. Since I've had both devices, I've received numerous amounts of updates on the devices, which makes me think Samsung actually really cares and are proud about these devices, and they're committed to making sure that it stays as good as it can be or even gets better over time. The Samsung Galaxy S21 series comes in a variety of colors. Some colors are actually special colors available on the website, orders only, but what I will really say is there's so many different colors available for different tastes as well. On the back of the devices, you have that camera housing as well, and if you look at them closely, you see how they wrap around the frame, giving it that unibody look. If you get the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra in black, it comes in this stealth industrial look, which looks fantastic in my opinion. 1 minute you're looking at it, it looks unfinished. At the same time, it just looks really good. I love that stealth finishing, and the matte finishing just complements it really well. Nonetheless though, the Samsung Galaxy S21 basic, the Phantom Violet that I've got here, the base model, looks great as well. It's something that I love the color, and it just looks good in pictures as well when you're taking pictures of it to share online. Besides all those things in terms of design, what to bear in mind is the sizes. So if you prefer a compact size, the S21 is the one to go for. But if you don't mind that big, large display, then go for the S21 Ultra. And there's also extras that you get with getting that bigger devices as well and paying an extra, which we'll talk about more further down the line in the video. But what I really like is, regardless of which size you go for, they offer you that same experience in terms of processor performance. You get the same Exynos 2100 or Snapdragon 888 in whichever one you go for. Onto the display quality is something to talk about as well. The S21 basic model now has a Full HD Plus display. It's stepped down from last year's Galaxy S20's QHD display, which is something that for most people you won't notice the difference, to be honest with you. But if you're coming down from a higher resolution device, you will notice it for sure. And that's talking from my perspective, in the sense that coming from a Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra with that sort of display, high resolution display, I think it's WQHD Plus, you can notice the difference as soon as you turn on the Full HD Plus on the Samsung Galaxy S21. But nonetheless, it's still vibrant, it's bright, it looks fantastic, whether you're watching movies, playing games, whatever you're doing, reading books, it's there as well. You also have eye comfort available as well as a feature on both devices, which I tend to turn on. I use it all the time. It just means it adapts to the way that I use it and the environment that I'm using it in, so that the blue light emission doesn't really affect my vision in terms of digital fatigue. Elsewhere, we have a 120Hz display, and the good news is if you go for the S21 Ultra, you can use a 120Hz display at the full resolution, so at the full WQHD Plus. You'll be able to put it there as well and actually use that adaptive refresh. And it's adaptive in the sense that now it won't be draining your battery. So depending on what you're doing on the smartphone, it will adjust accordingly. So if you're playing games, you might be able to get that peak performance in comparison to just reading text on your smartphone, saving battery life. Another bonus to having Full HD Plus on the base model of the S21 is that it's less tasking, again, on the processor, the graphics chip, and your battery. Another advantage of getting S21 Ultra is the support for S Pen, which is something that's new in the S line. Because we've seen this before in the Note 20 range and Note series, and that's one of the reasons why I really love the Note series, because with that S Pen I can do things like quickly create GIFs and cut out things, screenshots and all that stuff. But what to bear in mind though is you don't get the full functionality on the S21 series, so maybe that's something that will change in the future. Time will tell. Another improvement we see on the display side of things is that fingerprint unlock, and the fingerprint scanning area is larger as well on both the Exynos version and the Snapdragon version as well. So again, it just means that it's a lot more responsive, it covers a wider area, and if you got wet fingers, it works better as well. It recognizes it better than it did on the predecessor, which is a big bonus. And in my experience, I find that they're really quick, and I wish I could say the same for the face unlock, but I don't think that's Samsung's focus right now, and in the pandemic that we're in right now, it's much more reliable and better experience for the users like yourself to actually be able to use your fingers to unlock it, since we're wearing masks a lot these days. Onto the camera quality, this is another area that we've seen some disparity when you're using an Exynos version and Snapdragon version before, but this year it's so close, it's so close in terms of performance for me that you don't really notice the difference, in my opinion. I mean, you can dig deeper and proper pixel peek and see all the differences and stuff like that, but for me, for the everyday user, content creators, you won't notice a massive difference between these devices. I think at the start I said the front-facing camera on the S21 Ultra was 64 megapixel, but no, sorry. Correction, that's 40 megapixel front-facing camera. In my experience though, one thing I did notice is when you're using auto HDR mode, the oversaturation kicks in when the image processing happens, and it's quite annoying sometimes. I have to turn it off completely, especially in broad daylight. That's when you actually see this come into fruition. So what you need to do is make sure you watch that and switch it off if you need to do so, switch it on when you need to do so. Is up to you what your preferences are. But that saturation is much more on the orangey side, so it doesn't deal with skin tones very well, especially when shooting in portrait mode. What's new on the S21 Ultra is you have a dual telephoto lens, so you have 3 times and a 10 times to deal with that scenario when you need to shoot in those focal range. For me, 10 times is more than enough. As soon as you start going into space zoom and you're doing 100 times, it just becomes useless to actually use for any purposes in terms of sharing the content. But if you're someone like me who's sometimes lazy and I want to maybe see a parking meter to see how long I've got left on the parking and I don't want to get out of the car, I can use that massive zoom camera that you've got on there and actually zoom in and see what the parking timings are and all that kind of stuff. But if that doesn't really matter to you, I wouldn't worry about that as a feature that you need to make as a deciding feature when deciding which one to go for. As always though, for me, I think the hardware is really good in terms of camera lenses on both devices. It's the software processing and the image processing, that's when you might see some inconsistency, especially when shooting videos as well. I really do love the stabilization though when shooting videos, whether you're shooting Full HD Plus or UHD. But when shooting 8K, I still recommend getting yourself an Osmo mobile thing to make sure you get that stabilization accurately there, which I think anyone shooting 8K anyway, who's a content creator, would actually invest in getting something like that, so you get really smooth cinematic footage on there. But if you want to shoot handheld, you got steady mode, which will allow you to shoot at Full HD at up to 60 frames per second. Turn your super steady off. is still quite steady as well, as long as you're not shooting in 8K, in my opinion. If you're still shooting 4K videos, it's still nice and steady and still looks buttery smooth and really nice. But if you were to compare it to the iPhone though, I still think the iPhone takes the crown when it comes to video quality and the processing there. So, but again, that's just my opinion. You might prefer the Android version on the Samsung Galaxy S21 series, but take a look at that and see how you feel. There's actually a comparison video that I did. It's not really much of a comparison, more of a camera sample, video footage sample that I took on the S21 Exynos and the S21 Ultra Snapdragon processor. So there's a link in the description area, so do check that out and see what that looks like. You can see for yourself. The areas that both devices do really excel is the macro mode. So especially on S21 Ultra, it uses that ultra wide angle lens to shoot macro and it looks fantastic. Shooting low light as well looks very natural, which I really like. It looks really good. And portrait mode as well looks fantastic. It gets the edge detection right. It gets the color tone to a certain extent. If you turn on auto HDR off, it looks better to me, in my opinion, when I compared it to the iPhone, for example. It looks really good. And it also excels, in fact, in the sense that you can shoot 8K videos and you can take stills, high resolution stills from that 8K content that you shot as well. So you don't have to worry about shooting at the same time. What you've also got in the features and software side is director's view, which I haven't really used, but it just means that you can use all the lenses at the same time and sort of get creative with the kind of content that you can shoot. Obviously, as a consumer, one of the things that you're going to be doing with your device is also shooting video to share on things like Instagram stories and Snapchat. And that is still an issue with this device, although they made a big fuss about how it's now better in terms of the video content that you shoot. And the way around it really is to shoot natively in the camera and then upload separately to Instagram stories or Snapchat. That might improve the quality a little bit instead of actually recording in the native Instagram application itself, so bear that in mind. Lastly, in terms of performance and battery life, for me, the processor performance on both devices have been really good experience for me. In terms of battery, on the S21 you get 4,000 mAh battery, which is smaller than the S21 Ultra's 5,000 mAh battery. As you would expect, it's a bigger device, you can fit a bigger battery in the Ultra version. So if that matters to you, do bear that in mind. But regardless, they both have fast charge. You have to switch it on in the settings as well in terms of super fast charge. So do remember to do that if that's something you want to use. You still get that reverse wireless charging. You get wireless charging, which is also fast as well. There's no charger in the box, which can be a deciding factor for some, but for me, I've got plenty of chargers lying around the home, so I don't have to worry about that. But in terms of processing power though, as much as I'm not a big fan of Geekbench scores and all that kind of stuff, it still picks up really good scores, whether it's single core or multi-core. But where it really matters to me is the real life scenario. And in the real world, whether I'm gaming, whether I'm editing photos in Lightroom, whether I'm opening multiple applications, sending them to the background, opening them up again, it just works really well. And it's such a smooth experience, whether it's on the Exynos version or the Snapdragon version, which for me just looks much better. It's a much better experience, which is again one of the reasons why I would actually recommend this device to my friends and family. Looking forward into the future, Exynos did mention, or Samsung mentioned, that with Exynos they're going to be working with AMD very soon. In terms of their graphics chip, I assume that's where they're going to be getting involved, which just means that in the future we might see some improvements in terms of graphics performance, although as it is right now, it still looks fantastic. Overall, and in conclusion for me, I think both devices ticks a lot of boxes for me. They're actually devices that I would spend my own hard-earned cash on, and it's something that I would actually recommend to my friends and family to actually invest in, to buy. Both devices are great when it comes to battery life, processor performance, graphics performance in terms of gaming and all that kind of stuff. Camera performance is great on both devices, whether you're shooting videos or you're shooting portrait, shooting landscape photography. Ultra wide angle lenses are great as well, especially on the Ultra, where you can actually use it as a macro lens as well. But I don't have many bad things to say. If I have any bad things to say about the devices, it's the lack of micro SD card, the lack of chargers, charging brick in the box, and what else is there? The Full HD Plus on the S21 base model. I would have loved them to keep the QHD, but on the brighter side, you are saving on the battery life. But guys, let me know in the comments, is the Full HD Plus an issue for you? Does it really matter when deciding to get this device or not? Micro SD card expansion, is that really important to you? Do let me know as well in the comments below. And if you have any questions, drop them there as well. In the meantime, if it's your first time on the channel, please do check out other videos on the channel. Hit the subscribe, hit the bell notification as well, so you'll be one of the first people to know every time there's a video up on the channel. And smash that like button as well. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one.